The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back, comfortably zoned with the Fab Four. Alan Blumkin, how are you?
Hanging in there.
All right, and David Hubler is here.
Yes, I am.
And George Case the third, not the second, not the fourth, but the third. How are you, George?
I'm just fine, thank you.
Good. And Hushy, Hal Bock, Harold Bock on Facebook, forced into taking that name because Facebook screws up every account at one time or another.
That's
but,
true.
Am I right?
That's absolutely true.
That they're a piece of work, but without them, my life would not be as good as it is now. I have to
I'm
admit
happy
that.
for you. We're all happy for you.
Yeah, well, why not? Somebody has to be, and better be these four guys. We are here today to talk. Got some feedback there, but we're here today to talk about the Yankee Stadium and its history, and so much to talk about on that topic. We will we'll go from there. Talk Yankee baseball, history. I'm going to start with Alan Blumkin. How about you, Alan? Yankee Stadium.
My first game I ever attended, I was 10 years old, and my parents took me. The date was September 12th, 1953. And I was amazed by the color because, you know, on the TVs those days, you had no color.
Right.
So everything was new to me. You know, the field was so green, and the enormity of the place. And then, of course, when the first time I ever heard Bob Shepard announce, and it was just amazing. The Yankees won the game over Detroit 13-4. Mickey Mantle hit one into the center field bleachers off Tyko lefty named Billy Heft. This is so long ago that Ray Boone was the third baseman for the Tigers that day.
Long time ago. The patriarch of that family has been how many generations? 3 generations now of Boones. So, where is that coming from? I wonder. Alan, were you immediately taken with Yogi?
Because I came to baseball because my parents basically had no interest in it. When I started buying the cards in '51, I got a couple of Yogi cards. I said, "Who the heck is this?" And then when we moved from the Bronx to Queens, and I started going to third grade. All kids who were baseball fans. Nobody was my age was born in that area. We were all from Bronx or Brooklyn. I was from the Bronx, so I adopted the Yankees, and the rest is history. Of course, I started in the middle of the 5-year dynasty from '49 to '53. And to me, it was part of the laws of nature that they win everything every year.
Right. It was for a New Yorker like ourselves, excluding George, not a New Yorker, but close enough to New York. When you're a Yankee fan, and even if you weren't a Yankee fan, if you lived in New York, you thought the World Series was a birthright.
Yeah, exactly,
Every year. It was the Dodgers when the Yankees weren't in it, and Cleveland was, and they played the Giants. What was it, 12, 13 consecutive years where the World Series was played in New York?
From 1949 through 1958.
Wow.
And the no New York team won a World Series game from 1948 until 1957 when the Braves won a game. Yeah, because the Yankees swept the Phillies in 1950, and the Giants swept the Indians in 1954.
That is that Brooklyn Dodgers were in L.A., but they were, to a lot of people, still a New York team, as the Giants. There's still a big following of Giants fans, New York Giant fans. They're getting a little older, but aren't we all? Hal, you were naturally a New York Giant fan, a Gin fan. What did Yankee Stadium, did it mean more to you after you were covering?
Well, I'll tell you. First of all, you mentioned the Giants and how we're getting older. That's true. But there is a society, a New York Giants Nostalgia Society, very vibrant here in New York. I'm not a member because I don't care for the Giants anymore. They betrayed me. But they have a very vibrant membership. I spoke to them a couple of times after I had books published. And so that's one thing. Now, what did I think of Yankee Stadium? Well, Yankee Stadium, remember, was the first stadium in baseball. Until they built that ballpark in 1923, baseball was a kind of a pastoral sport, and there were ballparks, but they were not stadiums. Yankee Stadium was a trendsetter, and I covered games there for the Associated Press, and I was I wouldn't say I was in awe of the place, but I was very impressed, I'll tell you that. I remember one of the things I remember.
The monuments. Excuse me.
You want me to speak? All right. Well, one of the things I remember was the manager's office right off the clubhouse. You would, after the game, the protocol was that you would go to the manager's office and listen to him for a while, and then there was a door that led from the manager's office right into the ball player's dressing room. So that was the protocol there. The thing I remember most about Yankee Stadium as a kid growing up, I didn't go there frequently, I went there occasionally, was the low fence in right field. They had a very shallow fence, very small fence in right field, and often the right fielder would go back for a fly ball, and he'd wind up falling into the stands. And I also remember, very few people remember this, but the Yankees had a great relief pitcher named Joe Page. And Joe Page would jump over that fence to come into the game in the 8th or 9th inning. So I remember that. That was a very kind of an impressive moment for the way he would...
Ryan Duran did that also. Ryan Duran did that also until he jumped over once late in 1959 and broke his wrist.
On that same fence.
Yeah.
Wow. You covered Casey, didn't you?
He was a trendsetter.
Hal?
He was a trendsetter because there really was no such thing as a relief pitcher by that name. Joe Page really helped create the position of close relief pitcher. I mean, he was the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the first great closer, I guess. Although there were others. There were other relief pitchers before him.
Jim Constanti comes to mind.
In 1950, he started the opening game of the World Series. Came out of the bullpen to start the opening game for Philadelphia.
Right.
That was because Art Simmons was in the military.
What about the guy who was general manager of the Mets?
Johnny Murphy.
Johnny Murphy.
Yeah.
That's right. Johnny Murphy.
Yeah.
Was a great relief pitcher for the Yankees. So the position had existed, but Page. There was something about Joe Page that was very, very appealing to me as a kid, and I remember that very well.
Well, Allie Reynolds spent some time in the bullpen. Came in for Casey during that 5-year streak. What do you guys remember about Allie Reynolds?
Jennifer, I think she might have called through.
Hello.
I'm on here.
Allie Reynolds.
Allie Reynolds.
The chief, super chief, yeah.
Of him?
Yeah,
I remember
Stengel, for some reason, Reynolds had a year in 1952 where he was 20-8 and won the ERA title. And the next year he converted him to a relief pitcher, and he didn't have enough innings to qualify for the ERA title coming off that season. But Stengel liked versatility.
Yeah. Hey,
Reynolds showed that he was able to do that. You know?
Yes.
Reynolds had a no-hitter against the Boston Red Sox. 9th inning, 2 out, Ted Williams at the plate, right?
Yeah,
and
51,
Williams hit the little pop fly behind home plate. Now, the Yankee catcher is Yogi Berra, who's going in the Hall of Fame. And Berra goes back to get the pop fly, and he drops it, or it falls uncaught. And so Ted Williams, perhaps the greatest hitter of our generation, has another chance. Reynolds continues to work. Williams pops up another one behind home plate. And Yogi better catch this one, and he did. And that completed a no-hitter. So that's another memory.
Okay, before I get to George Case to tell us what it was like for his dad in Yankee Stadium, I want to just say, as a fan, as a kid, listening to the pop in the glove when Reynolds warmed up to pitch in a game was incredible. It was the loudest I'd heard, loudest sound I've heard on the baseball field. But tell us, George, do you have any memories specifically of your dad playing in Yankee Stadium besides the Lou Gehrig game? And that's a memory because my mother attended that. The Lou Gehrig speech, "I'm the luckiest man in the world," 1939. Your dad lined up on the first baseline, and wow, did that stick with him for a long time?
Yeah,
George?
Ralph, I think it did because I think I've mentioned before, one of my earliest memories is my father talking about that particular day and the fact that he had played against Lou Gehrig, actually caught the last ball that Lou Gehrig hit in his major league career, fly ball to center field on April 30th at Yankee Stadium. And then 2 days later, 2 days later is when Gehrig announced that he was taking himself out of the lineup. Joe McCarthy tried to persuade him not to, but Lou had his mind made up, said, I'm not helping the team. And, the rest is history. Babe Dahlgren took over, and Lou Gehrig was going to be honored a few months later. And actually, less than 2 years after his luckiest man speech, Lou Gehrig passed away from the ALS complications. So, that memory is one that's very fresh and will always be fresh in my mind. I have the a photograph of that with Lou and my dad in the background. There was also situations where Yankee Stadium was very good to my father. He loved playing at Yankee Stadium. He was in left field when Bob Feller in 1946 pitched a no-hitter against DiMaggio and the Yankees. And the fact is that was a highlight. And also, my dad was not a home run hitter, but one of his 21 career home runs was at Yankee Stadium. So, I have a lot of good personal memories of Yankee Stadium. But the other thing about it, which really bothers me, is that there was so much history of Yankee Stadium over the years from 1923 until, for whatever the reason, they decided to knock it down, build a new one called the New Yankee Stadium. And as I think Alan Blumkin has said, it's a ballpark surrounded by a shopping mall.
Yeah, the first one, the old one was a shrine. This was just another ballpark.
Yeah, I agree.
But I was there.
To me, all the history. I mean, I understand why it had to be done, and they wanted to have a new modern ballpark and all that. But the history, to me, they could have preserved it. They preserved, Fenway Park. They preserved Wrigley Field. Certainly, Yankee Stadium, it could have been preserved. They didn't have to knock it down. I understand why they did it, from financially. But on the other hand, all that history, Cobb, Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, Berra, all the great players of the Yankees over the years and with the other teams as well that played at Yankee Stadium. And, today they've got a field. Apparently it's right next to where Yankee Stadium used to be, but it's a playing field. It's not Yankee Stadium. And it's there for recreational purposes, which is great because kids can say, hey, I played at, the field where Ruth and Gehrig and all those great players, but the stadium is what the history was to me. And, I really miss it, to tell you the truth.
Okay. David Hubler, you have a story that you've told before, but I love hearing it. It's with Charlie Silvera. Would you tell your Charlie Silvera story for us?
The late, great Charlie Silvera. Probably the most underrated catcher in the history of the game. Charlie Silvera, not too many catchers would have put up with the fact that they were always number two. You couldn't beat out Berra as a starting catcher. And Silvera was fairly good with that. He didn't have a problem with it. But when I used to go to Yankee Stadium as a kid, it was during the day games. And there were lots of times when there wasn't much crowd there. I cut school a couple of times to go.
You cut school?
Yeah, and I spent NYU, even with my cuts.
Well, it wasn't so bad he cut school, but he was the teacher.
Yeah. So, and I mean, between there and the Polo Grounds, I got to speak to a lot of ball players, and not have any. The only one I thought I ever had a really relationship with was Bobby Richardson. But anyway, the Charlie Silvera story. We were there one day, and the first one in the stands. It's before the game started, and I forget. I don't even remember who the Yankees were playing that day. It was a day game. Nobody plays day games anymore. So anyway, so I get down to the box seats right in front of home plate, and I'm watching Silvera, and he's doing his catching warm-ups and stuff. And I yelled across, "Hey, Charlie, can you give me a ball?" Because he was catching baseballs, and there were lots of baseballs all over the place. And he looked at me and he said, "If you go to somebody's home for dinner, do you ask to keep the silverware?" And he stumped me. he stumped me cold. I mean, he wasn't nasty. He wasn't rude. He just made the comment, and I mean, God love him. That's the way you handle kids when you're in the big leagues. You don't run them down. You may give them a little bit of a lesson, as he did to me. And I didn't get a baseball from him. In fact, my career at Yankee Stadium, which is hundreds of games, I never caught a baseball. Never even picked one up between the seats. And I probably have the record, or at least I'm close. The only person never to get a foul ball in Yankee Stadium.
You know, David, that's a great story. I also wanted to mention, and Hal, and I'm sure David, if you'll recall, I believe, at least it was when I was a kid, the players' parking lot was just outside the Yankee Stadium gate. And the kids used to wait, and I know they did at other ballparks, but the kids used to wait for, Rizzuto or Ford or whatever to come out of the players' entrance, and then, they'd jump in their car, and they a lot of times that's where they were able to get an autograph.
That's
right across the street. It was right across the street from the players' entrance.
That's right, Hal. It was, my memory was it was very, very close, and what you just said now, that's exactly where it was.
Yeah.
But the easier place to get to talk to the ball players was in the Polo Grounds. The Polo Grounds parking lot was just adjacent to the old Polo Grounds, and these guys. I mean, I remember talking to Sal Magley's wife for about 10 minutes, waiting for him to come out to go home. It was just such, as they say in Yiddish, a Haman place. I mean, I never got to Ebbets Field, but the Polo Grounds to me was a real low. I wouldn't say income. I don't think it that way. I mean, but it was closer. Yankee Stadium still has the aura of, boy, you got to break some barriers to get these guys. But hologram, you walk out there, and there's Willie Mays and Dusty Rhodes and guys like that, and you can talk to them as they went to their cars.
Yeah, I have a little story. In 1957, in June 19th, it was a Sunday. And they're playing, the White Sox were challenging them at that point. And they were playing a doubleheader up at Yankee Stadium. So me and my friend, we were 13, 14 years old at the time. We travel up from where we were living in Queens, which involved a bus and 2 trains. So we get up there, and we didn't know anything about buying tickets in advance. We go onto the grandstand line, and it's around the block. So my friend and I talk it over, and we decide to buy obstructed view for $210 instead of the $130 for the grandstand. And it was, making an 80-cent decision in 1957 was huge. And so we went there, and by the 5th inning of the first game, there were 2 seats in a row and back of us to the side where nobody was sitting. We went there, and nobody ever showed up for the seats.
Nice.
So we got very, very lucky with that.
Yes. How?
I was there for 1973 for the last game before the renovation, and I was there in 1976 for the first game. That when it reopened.
Okay, I just had a thought, and I wanted to finish what Hal Bock was saying about being deserted by the Yankees, by the Giants. You were a married man by then, am I correct?
Well, no. The Giants left town in 1957. I didn't get married until 1961. I was still in college.
Okay, I didn't realize that them deserting affected you all that much.
Well, no, I have to admit that I was in love in 1957 with the woman who would become my wife. But at the time, she didn't know it. See, so I was in love, but she was not aware of it at that point. So when the Giants left town,
it was nice of you to tell her, Hal.
Yeah, I did. Eventually, I did. And when the Giants, and she stuck around. And when the Giants left town, I was disappointed and annoyed, but I had a lot of other things on my plate. I was a sophomore in college, or freshman. I was in my freshman year at NYU, and it was. I had her on my mind, and I was working at the World Telegram and Sun, rest in peace, the great newspaper.
Yes, it was.
And I had a lot of things going on in my life that distracted me from the Giants, but I was annoyed by them deserting New York, and I was not going to root for the Yankees. That was like I was like treason to root for the Yankees as far as I was concerned, and I certainly was not going to root for any other team except my Giants. But my Giants were now 3,000 miles away. So I said, well, okay, I'll see you later, baseball, and I'll pay attention to the Knicks, and I'll pay attention to the Rangers, and I'll pay attention to the Giants, the football Giants, and baseball can go fly a kite as far as I'm concerned. And then they realized that they shouldn't have deserted the New York market, and they gave us the Mets, which was another problem for me, Right. But by then I was married and had other things on my mind.
I had an uncle who was an absolutely fervent Giants fan. And when he got married to my mother's sister, he had two sons. And he was this was before 57. He was hoping, praying, doing everything he could to make these two kids Giants fans. And I was there as a young kid, and I was closer to my cousins, than I guess he was to his sons at that point, because they became Yankees fans for life, and my uncle never got over that. That they became Yankees fans instead of Giants fans like he was.
One of the most amazing things to me is that in 1961, when they had the whole Mantle Maris home run thing going on, it was one of the best teams they ever had in the 1961 Yankees. They drew 1,750,000 with no National League competition. And then, of course, the Mets came in, and most of the people I knew who were either Dodger or Giant fans wound up being Met fans.
Yeah,
that was the whole idea. They replaced two teams with the Mets, and they expected the fans of those two teams to flock to the Mets, and many of them did. Because, let me put it to you this way. I preferred National League baseball. The game was played differently in the National League, even well before the designated hitter came in. The game was just, to me, was a more exciting game in the National League. There was more base running, there was more steals, there was more hit and run. There was more of that. The game in the American League was more of a power game. 60 home runs and 61 home runs and all of this. So I preferred National League baseball. And so I was not interested in the Yankees. And I also was bored silly by them winning every year. I thought that's not right. How can you win every year? Why doesn't Detroit win one year? Why doesn't Washington win one year?
Cleveland
why doesn't, that was annoying to me, that the Yankees would win every year. So I had no interest in rooting for the Yankees or the American League or paying attention to American League. In fact, even today, and now in my retirement, I don't watch the American League games. I watch National League Baseball. I watch the Mets. Now, unfortunately, the geniuses who run this sport have decided that it's a good idea to have interleague games all season long. Well, I don't like them. I'm annoyed by the interleague games because I think interleague games should be the World Series when the American League champion plays the National League champion. Now, you know, of course, that what's going to happen, I hope you guys are aware of this, they're talking about realignment. They're talking about adding 2 teams to have 32 teams, and they're talking about realignment and eliminating, can you believe this, eliminating the American and National League and coming up with something called the American Conference and the National Conference, and they'll be geographically aligned. And I don't know if I can handle that. I really don't.
No.
Hal, where'd you find that information? I haven't even heard that.
Yeah,
it's like football all over again.
Yeah, that's they're copying the football pattern. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
They'll go to 32 teams. They'll have 8 4-team divisions. The World 16 teams in the playoffs. The World Series will be played into December, by which time nobody will care, and they're going to do away with the leagues as they've been for the last 120 years.
Yeah.
Well, also, I hope you guys are aware that this took place yesterday. The extra base runner, the runner on second base in extra innings, permanent. They're going to have it forever now.
Oh my God! Really?
Except in the playoffs,
permanent.
What's really hypocritical about it is that they're not going to have it in the playoffs and in the World Series.
Exactly.
So what are they saying about the worth of the rule? I don't understand that, and we forget how much it skews the record book.
Exactly.
How many runs scored? Plus, they've lengthened the bases. There's more of the base than they used to be.
Yeah, bigger bases, a pitch clock.
Bigger bases.
Got to throw the ball within 15 seconds.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
And
well,
all in the effort to speed up the game.
In the minors last year, it was very successful. I
understand that. But you know what? It's all in the interest of speeding up the game. Well, you know what? There's a famous song about baseball, and in that song it says, "I don't care if I never get back."
Never. Right.
You go to the ballpark to watch the whole game, and if it's 10 innings or 12 innings or 14 innings, that's how long the game is. It's a game. It's the way it's played. Yeah. It's the way it's been played for 150 years. Leave the frigging game alone. But no, they can't. They can't leave it alone. So now we're going to have the ghost runner on second base in extra innings forever, apparently, permanently. And I'm very angry about that.
Because they're us dinosaurs. Yeah.
And the idea of making the bases bigger, which shortens the distance between first and second and third, that's insane.
Well, that's what they've done. And also, you're aware of this fact, that the pitcher is allowed to throw over to hold the runner at first base or third base or wherever he's throwing, second base. He's allowed to throw 2 times.
Yes.
If he throws a third time and he does not pick off the runner is granted second base. It's called a balk. Can you believe that?
Unbelievable.
Henderson may come back.
Hey, as the son of a base stealer, no, I can't even imagine that.
That's right. Your father, if your father was alive at age 85 or whatever age he would have been, he could come back.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, if you know baseball, I mean that's one of the. It's a matter of trying to get that little extra jump on the pitcher, and the pitcher, on the other hand, he's trying to keep that runner as close as he can. So that's where the pickoff play and the short stride and all that stuff. That's part of the game.
That's the cat and mouse of the game,
right?
And they don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Somehow they don't get it. I don't know.
And how about the fans that used to, between pitches, converse about what was going on? If it took 7 seconds,
yeah, you're right. That's right.
Seconds, you lose that the camaraderie with who you're going to the game with.
Exactly.
If you're rushed into getting back to the action, it sucks. I'll tell you. But you know what?
Part of baseball, one of the beautiful parts of baseball, as I once knew it, is the anticipation of what's going to happen next. Is the pitcher going to throw over? Is he going to throw a curveball? Is he going to come in with a fastball? What's he going to do? What's the batter going to do? And that's the anticipation. It's called cognitive. You're thinking about the game, not the way other games are played. Other games are hit and run. I mean hit and collide and knock the guy's block off and maybe give him a concussion in the action. Right. That's why I've always loved baseball. But they're conspiring to take it away from me. Yeah,
still going to have 50 a game.
I saw this article where they were talking about who's prospective the best hitters in the game up in 3. And one of these insane stats that no one in the stands could ever possibly be interested in is how many balls are hit off the barrel of the bat. This is a new stat that will help to categorize the hitters. If they hit it off the barrel of the bat and it's an outfield fly, that's a special statistic. It's insane what they've done to the.
Well, that's analytics and that's sabermetrics and that's all that fancy stuff. For me, baseball is hits, runs, and errors.
Right, that's right. It's the 3 columns, 9 inning scorecard. That's what counts.
Yes, George, the things that your dad was taught and he taught minor leaguers coming up are not even being taught anymore.
Yeah, I know they're not, Ralph, and that's the other thing that bothers me, as it would Hal and David, Alan. I mean, the fundamentals are missing. Guys just don't know how to bunt. They don't know how to hit behind the runner. They don't know which base to throw. The base running is atrocious. Those are things that my dad, and not only my father, but anybody who was a player in that era and before, I mean, they were fundamentals that you learned, and you taught those fundamentals to the next generation of players. So I'm aghast, to tell you the truth, at all these crazy rules that Hal has talked about. I mean, I just can't imagine that crazy rule of the balk at first base. I can't imagine this ghost runner at second base. To me, it's just all crazy stuff that's being put in by these, MBAs who don't know a baseball from a football, but they know their analytics and they know their computerized reports and all that kind of stuff, but they have no baseball sense whatsoever. Again, that's just my opinion.
No, that's my opinion too, pal. That's my opinion too, George.
Well, thanks, Al.
100%.
After the experimental seasons, when they used some of these things in the minor leagues, I was convinced that they were not going to ever make it to the major leagues. This notion of big bases and 2 pickup throws, and yet, horror of horrors, they've now incorporated them into their Major League Baseball rules. And it's terrible.
Another wonderful development is that in the off season, all you talk about anymore is who signed where for how much. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are the same guys, Alan, that they're turning down $350 million 10-year contracts because it's not enough.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the Twins are paying Joey Gallo $11 million this year to bat 160 and strike out 40% of his plate appearances.
Yeah. See, and those guys are loving it. Man, they're in hog heaven with this nonsense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, David, that and the agents are telling them. I mean, what the heck? The agents get a piece of the action. So the bigger the contract, the better it is for the agent, and that's who they're listening to. You know, they're not looking at the team and the GMs and the presidents of the clubs and all that kind of stuff. They're listening to the agent, and if they got a situation where they maybe could make another $5 million a year, they're going to do it if the agent tells them to.
Yep.
You know, people made fun of Charlie Finley, the late owner of the Kansas City and then the Oakland A's. Charlie Finley came up with an idea during one of the many labor problems that they were having. He said, let's make everybody a free agent every year. And they laughed at him. Oh, you can't do that. You break up the ball clubs and da-da-da. But you know what? It wouldn't have been a bad idea.
Right.
It wouldn't have been a bad idea. Because these guaranteed contracts, they're just crazy. I mean, you know, a pitcher, for example, signs a 3-year deal for $100 million, let's say, and he throws one pitch, and his arm goes kaflooey, and there goes the money, right? I mean, you can't have that.
Yep.
It's just foolish. It's foolish. I wouldn't be a good general manager these days. I really wouldn't. Because I wouldn't give him that kind of money.
I think Branch Rickey or George Weiss would do in this atmosphere.
My team would end in last place, I guarantee
you. As innovative as he was and as successful as he was with that mini dynasty, 5 years in a row, 3 world champions, when it came to free agency, that was the year that he was either didn't give Catfish Hunter that money by he screwed up, or either intentionally or unintentionally with Catfish Hunter. He was supposed to pay him some sort of a clause, and I don't remember what it was for, but by not paying him, he became a free agent. And that started the decline of the dynasty. You're right about Finley. He was quite shrewd. He was going to play along with multi-million-dollar contracts for these guys. Yet, you can't blame the player. I never blame the player. It's what's out there, what's being offered. And if they're being paid, that means that there's money to pay them.
Well, that's the point. The great Marvin Miller, who's now in the Hall of Fame, and he was the great labor leader of the players, used to say, if they can't afford it, they won't pay it. If they're not making money after paying these contracts, they won't pay these contracts. So clearly, there's a vigorish there that they're making money. The teams are making money. You don't have to make a benefit for these ball clubs, even with these enormous salaries that they're paying, the payrolls. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the economy of the game. And
yeah, it is, Hal. And you know what? They got huge contracts advertising wise, but they also have MLB properties. You know, you can't have a product without getting the MLB properties okay, and they get a piece of the action. So every T-shirt, every shirt, every hat, every ball, everything that you see in one of these fan shops, or you go and buy them online, or you go buy them in a store, MLB gets a piece of that, and that's a huge money maker for Major League Baseball.
To say nothing of the broadcast rights.
My understanding is that this year players are going to have advertising on their uniforms, like IndyCar drivers. Have you heard that?
No. Oh, God.
Well, they've already had Nike swoops.
Yeah, they had that already. I know. Yeah, but they're going to have...
billboards like tennis and golf players.
Yeah, tennis and golfers are, they probably were the first. You can't watch a tennis match or a golf match and they're interviewing somebody and they got somebody, whether it's either an Under Armour or Nike or Reebok or whatever the logo is, that's on their shirt or on their racket covers. All that stuff is all part of the game for these players, no matter what the sport. And people think, well, these huge contracts, but everything that player does is a moneymaker for that player.
Sure.
And
my understanding is that Aaron Judge is going to have a sign on his back: "Eat it, Joe's, get gas."
Bill Leck said at the start of free agency, that's not going to be the high cost of superstars. It's going to be a high cost of mediocrity.
Right. Well, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, I think it all started with the shoe contracts, and I'm blaming George Case for that.
Well, thank you very much. But I'll tell you what, the shoe contracts that they had when I was there were chump change compared to what they're getting now.
Right. But you started a young man.
Soccer is where the marketing advertisements on the players' uniforms. You look at some of those professional soccer teams and leagues, and they're all decorated with various products and services and things. But it didn't take long for it to creep up into. Now, I don't see it much in the NHL. The NBA, they're going to have to wear bigger, baggier uniforms to fill out all the advertisements that they can put on the basketball uniforms. But I don't see it in hockey at all just yet, or the NFL.
Okay, I just want agreement from you guys. It's not what it used to be. It's
sure.
But it is still
Amen.
The best around. I mean, what's better? Sadly. The second base rule is the one that I want to go on record as saying I'm most repulsed by that. Extra innings.
Yeah.
Put a guy at second. It changes the whole complexion of the game, and that saddens me.
Ralph,
the union likes it.
What happens if they decide that the game still isn't speeded up enough? Let's put that runner on third base and start from there.
Why not just let him score, David?
No, play the extra inning with two outfielders instead of three. That'll solve the problem, right?
Right, exactly. Or like King in the Court, just the pitcher and catcher,
right?
Maybe one position play.
I had an idea a couple of years ago. I wrote this in a column. I said, if you really want to speed up the game, I have a solution. You line up the two teams along the foul lines like they do on opening day, and you have the two managers sitting at home plate over a table with Stratomatic baseball. And you play the game on Stratomatic baseball, and that's the game. And it'll be over in an hour and a half.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You get the players right there. When a player gets a doubleheader, a double in Stratomatic, they say, Joe Doge just got a double, and he runs the jogs to second base, stands
he can go on second base. Sure, right.
Yeah, they applaud. And they'll play the game in a half an hour. It takes 45 minutes to set up the game, and they play it in a half an hour, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait till we have a few rainouts with the schedule. The team doesn't come back. The season series, and they don't come back at all. And to make up rained out games is going to be very interesting.
Although that's the rule I really welcome in a way, a balanced schedule. When you play Stratomatic, everybody plays the same amount of games against everybody else. And it may have flaws, but I like it.
And you don't have to have 26 men. You only need like 9 players for Stratomatic baseball. You don't need 26 men. Cuts down the payroll.
You need 10 pitchers for each team, at least.
And you could have the old timers never retire. They just go out there and they're cheered. Rod Carew is now playing second base.
That's
but he
right.
doesn't really play second base. He just goes out to second base and he gets a cheer. And
I would remind you guys, and I've got to go soon, but I'll remind you guys that there used to be a Cracker Jack sponsored an old timers game.
Right, they did
in Washington. And Luke Appling, who was about 75 years old at the time, hit a home run off Warren Spahn. And it was the highlight of his career. I mean, 75 years old, you don't hit a home run. But he did.
Yeah.
I
saw that game. I was there, Hal.
So there you go. See, you know.
It was they didn't have, they couldn't move the fence. It used to be a movable thing for the football and baseball games, but it froze. It was all metal, and it just corroded and whatever, and they couldn't move it out back for baseball. So they put up a fence. And Appling hit it over that fence. It was only about 250 feet down the line, but he managed to get it.
Yeah, but I'm 76. I can assure you that was no small feat to hit a ball 200.
No, it wasn't. He was a big guy. Appling was a big guy.
But he wasn't a power hitter in his career. And to do that,
he was more surprised than anybody. Let's face it.
Okay. Hey, we're going to say goodnight. We're up against the time. Hal has to go, and we got to keep this within the hour. Next month, it'll be a great show as well.
Okay. We'll talk then.
Okay, enjoyed it. Good night, everybody.
And,
bye-bye.
Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, the Fab Four, George Case, Alan Blumkin, and David Hubler. 4 of my favorite people in the whole world. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As I say, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. My name is Ralph Tyko. I am the weak link of it all. Adios and happy trails.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.